Welcome to the Wordy Pair Podcast, your go-to hub for all things writing, world building, and the occasional dive into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We're breaking down the barriers between you and your next great story. Whether you're a seasoned scribe or just scribbling your first sentences, we've got something for you. We'll be discussing everything from crafting compelling characters to dissecting the good, the bad, and the downright bizarre in the world of fiction. Okay, this script says you guys are eccentric. Isn't that just a 3-syllable word for weird? No offense. So, whether you're in need of inspiration, a good laugh, or just a couple of weirdos to keep you company on your writing journey, you're in the right place. Thanks for tuning in to the Wordy Pair Podcast.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Wordy Pair Podcast. As always, I am Rudy.
And I am Justin.
And we are not lost in the woods, which is to our protection at this point.
Not yet, but we're going camping.
I mean, maybe. I'm not sure that I want to after reading this story.
Really? I do.
I mean, I like my feet as they are and not my burning feet of fire.
Jumping a bit ahead there, but okay.
So, this week we are going to be talking about a story written by Algernon Blackwood. There's an essay that Lovecraft wrote where he talks about his experiences and kind of his ideas or, even some light criticisms of horror in literature, supernatural horror in literature. And Algernon Blackwood has a pretty significant chunk of this essay that's about him, and one of the stories that Lovecraft notes is the Wendigo. He calls it another amazingly potent, though less artistically finished tale compared to the Willows, which is another similar length kind of story by Algernon Blackwood. And we are gonna talk about this story this week. I don't know. I'm rambling. What do you got, Justin?
No, that's all good. Do we want to do an aside?
An aside of what sort?
An aside that has absolutely nothing to do with the Wendigo.
Oh, sure, I guess.
It does have to do with Pulp Fiction, though.
The movie or the concept?
The concept.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a thing that just happened, so it's fresh in memory, and I thought it was a little bit interesting.
Okay, go for it.
Do you remember the old Ghostbusters cartoon?
Like not the real Ghostbusters, but the Ghostbusters cartoon?
Yeah, whichever one was the one that everyone was watching in the 90s.
Well, there were two shows. One was called Ghostbusters, another was called The Real Ghostbusters, and was based on the movie with Harold Ramis.
Maybe it was The Real Ghostbusters. I think it was The Real Ghostbusters. Now you've got me confused, and I don't remember.
Because there was a show called Ghostbusters that had 3 guys and I think like a giant monkey or something.
Okay, it was not that.
But then there was the one that was based off of the same characters and world building of the movie, the popular comedy movie. That was the real Ghostbusters. They had to name it that because there was already a cartoon called The Ghostbusters.
Yes, that is the one to whom I am referring.
Yeah, okay, well, go ahead.
Apparently there was an episode of that cartoon which was called The Collect Call of Cthulhu.
Oh. Okay, cool.
And not to drag it out too much, but I sat through the whole thing, and it was a nice nod to Lovecraft and other pulp horror fans, to the extent that at one point a plot element was that they had to go find some old dude that who was it? I believe it was who was the one that Dan Aykroyd played?
Dan Aykroyd was Ray.
Ray, yeah. Ray knew some old guy that had a bunch of collections of like the weird tales and pulp. They actually name dropped Weird Tales in the show. And the guy's name that they went to visit was named Howard, which in and of itself doesn't jump out too much, but it's like, oh, okay, Robert Howard.
Yeah.
And then the main villain of the show was the guy
what? Robert Howard, what? Howard
Robert
Phillips.
E. Howard?
No, Howard Phillips Lovecraft.
It could have been that too. Good point. I didn't even think
Yeah.
of that. My first thought was because they were name dropping several authors and they had already mentioned H.P. Lovecraft several times.
Oh,
so
okay.
I just assumed that it was.
Was it a guy named Howard or was it a guy named Mr. Howard?
It was a guy named. It might have been Mr. Howard. I don't know.
If it was Mr. Howard, then I can understand the Robert E. Howard. Yeah.
They only said Howard. I don't remember if there was a Mr. They didn't give a first or last name, but they did the same thing with the villain of the show.
Okay.
Whose name was Clark Ashton.
Okay.
And I thought that was a bit nice, name dropping all those things and then talking about H.P. Lovecraft.
That is remarkably literate for a children's television show.
Incredibly so. That's why I bring it up. I wouldn't have done this aside for Ghostbusters of all things, talking about horror, but they talked about how there were a lot of pulp fiction. They kind of brought the Necronomicon into reality in this episode, so it's like a real thing in this episode. So the Ghostbusters are talking about how during the pulp horror era in magazines like Weird Tales, there were a lot of authors that made references to the Necronomicon. Mm-hmm. Except in the scope of this cartoon, the Necronomicon is actually a real thing. And the plot of it is that a cult of Cthulhu is trying to resurrect Cthulhu, which they succeed in doing at the end of the cartoon. And the Ghostbusters have to destroy Cthulhu with lightning.
Which is kind of how they did things.
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting, but it's got a lot of nice nods to the pulp horror genre, namely that they have a bunch of cultists chanting, weird earlieth Cthulhu stuff. The classic line with the Fatagans and whatnot. Yeah. And they even made they even mentioned Gozer in context. I believe one of the Ghostbusters says, well, who is this Cthulhu anyway? And Egon says, Cthulhu makes Gozer look like, so I forget what he said, but it was like, it's like Gozer is Disneyland compared to Cthulhu, essentially.
Okay. Well, that's the appropriate amount of respect to be paid to that.
Yeah. So it's a very, very nice nod, even though the episode wasn't actually that good. It wasn't that bad either, especially if you look at it in the context of this was something that kids would be watching. Yeah. It kind of jumped from plot point to plot point really quickly and didn't, I imagine the whole cartoon was probably like this at the time, but, like the plot point of them finding the collection of weird tales to try and find a way to defeat Cthulhu. Yeah. They kind of it just happened, and then they didn't mention it again, but then they brought one book with them that became relevant when they actually fought Cthulhu, so.
Okay. I mean, I used to watch that show pretty frequently when I was a little kid. I don't remember it very well,
and I did not remember much about it at all. I only really remembered the ending theme when they were all in the parade, dancing and everything.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, that's about the extent of it. So yeah, that's my little aside with a little bit of pulp horror trivia to add to the collection.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I did not know that episode existed, and that is a surprisingly literate thing for them to put into a children's cartoon. That was pretty much just what's Slimer doing this week, and let's sell some action figures.
Well, Slimer's eating wieners. That's what he does.
Yes, it is. Eating whatever happens to be at hand.
I learned that from Lotax. Uh-huh. Blessed be the name. All right, so let's talk about some Wendigo. Let's talk about a great camping story. A good fireside tale. Yeah. Shall I begin?
Sure, go for it.
All right, well, this story begins in a way that I completely forgot, with several different characters, which is why I left such a big pause in between, hoping that you would start the thing off. But I remember, let's see how many of them I can actually remember. So, Simpson was the nephew that was supposed to be entering a parish. He was kind of a priest in training or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't very clear from what I remember reading. His uncle, the psychologist, I believe.
Dr. Cathcart.
Yeah, Dr. Cathcart. And
yeah.
there again, I don't remember too many details about why. I don't actually remember why they were all out on this trip other than it was an excursion.
They're hunting moose.
For fun. There wasn't any particular reason other than that, was there?
No, they were just out there to hunt moose. They wanted moose
just
trophies.
out there to hunt moose, yes. And I'm desperately trying to make sure I don't get it confused with characters from the Willows, which I also just had a good read. Well,
the characters in the Willows don't have names, so that helps.
Oh yeah, that does. Okay, so we also have Defago, who is supposed to be their
Well, so each of these city boys has a guide, and the guide for Dr. Cathcart himself is a guy named Hank Davis, and then Simpson's guide is a guy named Defago, Joseph Defago. Joseph is a French Canadian, and they also have an Indian person who's basically doing all the work on like the camp, cooking.
Yeah, the guy with the sweet name.
Yeah, his name is Punk.
You know, with a name like that, he's rocking out.
With a name like that, you're going to be associated with steam or frost or something.
Or spiky green hair and a nose ring.
Or that, yeah.
But, he's jamming. He's doing his thing. He's a very
They're all doing
proficient...
their thing. The problem is that they cannot find any signs of any moose in the area at all. So, they've been there for a couple of days, and they're like, there are no signs of moose here at all. This is getting kind of ridiculous. Like, maybe they're not here. Maybe they're somewhere else. The forest that they're hunting in, part of it nearby was just burned down the previous year in a big wildfire, and so they are kind of confused about where their hunt should be moving at this point, basically.
Hey, the dog moved closer.
Yay.
It's the Wendigo. It's after me. Thank you for that input, dog. All right, so we've got this nice collection of moose hunters that are not able to find any moose. They got this patch that's burned down, and one of them says, "Well, gee, maybe a couple of us should go up to this northwestern territory here and check things out there," which doesn't immediately raise any alarm bells, other than there's a couple of facial expressions on a few of our characters here that
the guides are a little bit uneasy.
Yeah, they especially Punk. I believe Punk was the one that was the most uneasy about it.
Yeah.
And while they don't have any objection per se, it does lead to a conversation in which there's kind of a back and forth between a couple of the characters, Dr. Cathcart for one, and I believe Defago were in not quite an argument, but sort of like, "Oh, well, you're not afraid to go, are you?" And was it Defago that was just like, "Of course I'm not afraid. It's it's just things. It's just things,
Scared? Nothing," he answered, with a flush of defiance. "There's nothing in the bush that can scare Joseph Defago. Don't you forget it." And the natural energy with which he spoke made it impossible to know whether he told the whole truth or only a part of it. Just to quote a little paragraph out of the story.
Yeah, there was a lot of that where it's just like, I don't know if this is really what's happening, but the reader knows that that's really what's happening.
Well, there's a lot of we don't get to see what people are really thinking in this story. It's kind of told from a perspective that's sympathetic with Simpson, the nephew of Dr. Cathcart.
Yeah.
And he's a city boy.
Do you want to pause and wait for this dog to stop whatever in God's name it's doing? Because she will go on for 20 minutes.
Sure, let's let you deal with the dog.
I can't deal with it. There's nothing I can do. I just have to wait till she gets sick of it.
Duct tape and a snout.
I mean, there's that. Literally that. I could feed her to a Wendigo, but the Wendigo would probably...
Good luck finding one.
You don't have them in where you are?
No, we have skinwalkers.
We have them here. You know we have Wendigos here. I mean, we're like right next to Canada.
Yeah. But
And
I mean,
that's
like
at least
you're in
30%
suburban
of
Michigan.
the population.
Well, okay, that's true.
You know, or at least 30% of 30% of Quebecian population.
Yeah, but Quebec's a long way off. Even from Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, they make their way south when it cools off down here.
That's fair.
We're not going to stop that dog from barking.
What is it barking at?
Nothing. Literally nothing. Doug will just stare out the window and bark. You close the window and she'll hear noises and bark. Once she decides she's going to start barking, she's not going to stop until she's done.
I see. And
we live in a world where it's no longer kosher to beat animals, so that option is off the table. Although, as I might have mentioned already, there's not really anything I ever heard about feeding the dog to a Wendigo, so that option is not off the table.
Yeah.
Just gotta find me a Wendigo. To Wendy's, where the Wendy go.
Yeah, right? Wendy go to Wendy's.
Yeah. Well, it's a plural Wendy's. It's not an apostrophe.
Yeah.
All right. I guess let's march forward and hope.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember.
So they are planning on what?
I should open up the story here.
That would help. So they're planning on basically expanding their scope. They're saying, we are not finding any moose here. Let's have one half the party move in one direction to the east and go a good day's trip out there and see if they find any signs. And we'll have the other group go to the west. So Cathcart's going to head to the east, and I believe Simpson is headed to the west. And Cathcart's taking Hank Davis, his guide, with him, and Simpson's got Joseph Defago with him. And the idea is that, if they find abundant signs of moose, that they'll come back to the main camp in a couple of days, and they'll say, hey, I found moose over this way, let's pick up and move over that way. Pretty simple thing to do. They're splitting the party, but there's not really anything out there that they're too worried about. It's surprising because you'd think that in the forests of Canada, people would be a little bit more worried about like grizzly bears or something, but there's pretty much no, if not no, almost no discussion of other large predatory animals that happen to live in that area.
Oh, there's no animal more predatory than a moose, so it kind of pushes all the other predators out.
Well, moose aren't predatory; they're just unpredictable.
Yeah, well, tell that to the last one I fought.
Yeah,
it got all of my credit card information.
You were moose fished?
Yes, I was moose fished. It was really weird going to the DMV and them being like, "This doesn't look like you at all. What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Just like a moose and sunglasses on my ID.
Like giving a thumbs up.
It. My identity's been
Not
stolen
again.
by one Roger Bullwinkle.
This is what I get for trying to buy maple syrup wholesale.
It's usually how it happens. Never give them your never order online.
So we get to follow along with Simpson and Defago as they head off to the northwest.
Yeah, we don't get anything of what Dr. Cathcart and what's his name?
Hank Davis.
Hank, thank you. Hank Davis is doing. Hank is Hank becomes more interesting at the end of the story.
Yeah,
because you learn just how much he knows about things, and it's not one of them things where, oh, this character knew all along. It's one of them things where it's like, oh, the one back at the camp that did not appear as suspicious of this as this like Defago and Punk.
Yeah,
he's the one that seemed to have the strongest feelings about what was going on.
Yeah.
So we're with Simpson and we're with Defago, and Defago kind of starts their adventure off by setting the boat up in a certain place and telling Simpson,
well, they have to cross a river first, right? Or a lake or something like that. There's a large body of water that they need to cross to go northwest. So they get into a canoe, and they paddle for a while. And it's quite a while, it's a good chunk of the day that they spend paddling. And then they pull the canoe up onto the land, and we get a nice little scene where Defago kind of shows what he knows of being a woodsman. He pulls the canoe up, he puts it upside down so that it doesn't, kind of get hit or filled up with anything. He puts the oars under it carefully so they don't get lost, like they did in the Willows. And he even marks some trees so that they can, more easily find their way back to the canoe. So then they walk for the remainder of the day. And over the course of the whole day, they say that they went about 30 miles, which is a pretty decent amount to move in a single day. They make a little camp with their little silk tent, set up a fire, and they get ready to go to sleep and start looking for moose in the morning. That's the idea, at least.
It's interesting that they made 30 miles because they spent there's a good 3 paragraphs, I'd say, just of the description of how thick the brush was.
Yeah.
And it's even a little strange because when they get to the camp, or maybe on the way to the camp, Defago tells Simpson that if anything happens to him, go back to the canoe and just head back to the other camp. And, don't linger about and get lost. But it's like, how would Simpson know how to get back? It didn't exactly describe them leaving marks or anything or a trail for him to find the canoe. So,
well, no, it says that they marked trees on the way there.
Did it?
Yeah, they marked trees with an axe.
Oh, I thought that was later.
I mean, he does it on the way. He does more of it on the way back to the canoe later, but Defago is making it so that they can so that he can hopefully find his way back. I mean, at this point, everything's pretty chill, right? They're just kind of like, yeah, there's always a chance that you get lost in the bush, but Simpson doesn't know how to deal with these kinds of gigantic forests. He's seen forests in Scotland, but they're much smaller than those in the northwestern Canada. So Defago's like, yeah, get back to because it'll be relatively easy to find the river, and then you can follow, or the body of water, or whatever it was. Then you follow the edge of that until you see the marked trees, something like that. But anyway, the idea is that Defago's like, don't come looking for me if something happens. You go find help because you're not going to be any good by yourself, basically.
And it's so great because Defago's basically like, yeah, my chances of dying are higher if I wait for you to try and find me. Just go get someone else.
Yeah.
Well warranted, though. I mean, Simpson wasn't exactly a failure in the brush in this story. He did work the circle of the camp to collect firewood several times and traded off doing so with Defago. He even moved about the forest at night. So obviously he was competent enough to move within the range of his camp and get back to it without getting lost.
Yeah.
So not particularly
green, but he's not stupid.
Averse to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We get to the creepy part of the story, though. The fun part, the part everyone's been waiting for. And
when are we going to get to the Wendigo?
I mean, that's a good question.
I did that last episode.
Did you?
1 or 2 ago, something like that. Anyway, keep going.
It's okay to repeat your jokes. Nobody.
It's okay to repeat Simpsons.
Nobody's going to remember from one to the next. No
one watches one to the next.
Exactly. I still maintain that we shouldn't have bothered leaving the author name out of the second April Fools, but that's okay. No, we have these 2 gentlemen staying in the forest, getting a fire going, and just sort of hanging out. And Defago, there's times at which he's separated from Simpson, and maybe I'm remembering wrong. Was there ever a time where the perspective was on Defago and Simpson?
No, I don't
around?
think so. What we get that's really interesting, before they go to sleep, there's a moment where they're both sitting around the fire, eating food, getting things ready to go to sleep so that they, so that stuff from the camp doesn't blow away or whatever. And Defago stops. He stops and he looks up, And to Simpson's perspective, he appears to basically sniff the air. And he does this for quite a while, actually. He spends quite a while kind of paralyzed there, and occasionally just kind of like the air. And this bothers Simpson because this is the first time that Defago has acted not confident in a significant way. But basically Defago kind of passes it off. He's like, "Did you smell something funny?" And Simpson's like, "No, I didn't smell anything." But earlier on in the story, we've already seen, or it's already been written that like Cathcart and Simpson are city boys, and their noses are not developed, and they can't smell 90% of the things that are important to smell in a forest. So, we have no confidence in Simpson saying, "No, I didn't smell anything." There might have been something billowing up under his nose, and he probably wouldn't have figured it out.
Yeah, and that's probably my favorite part of the entire book, is that moment where Simpson is examining Defago.
Mm-hmm.
A very in-depth examination of everything he witnesses, because he now has this tenseness of his own where he is convinced that something is up, and Defago refuses to spill the beans on what that might be.
Yeah.
He makes a lot of excuses, says it's nothing. He tells Simpson he was mistaken, but it's very clear from his waning expressions and his posturing that something was definitely up, and now he has Simpson on edge as well.
Even so, they managed to kind of calm things down, and this, if Defago was smelling something, even for him, it seems to go away. And so finally they're like, "Okay, well, let's turn in for the night. We'll start looking around for moose tracks tomorrow." And so they get into the tent, they get all rolled up in the tent, and they go to sleep. Or at least they try to.
Yeah, Simpson definitely tries to, but it doesn't quite work out.
No.
Yeah, he hears things in the woods. It's not really... It's one of those things where he hears it, but he doesn't quite know what he heard, and he isn't sure really how much he heard. It's just a brief sound, and it sets off alarm bells for some reason. And so now he's awake, and he's
it's
not exactly
it's not
sure
just that
where
either,
it's
but
coming.
Defago is also acting like he's perceiving something. There's a moment where Simpson perceives that Defago is basically holding onto his blanket and like sobbing into it or something like that. He's basically trying to put on a front, but failing.
Yeah, because then the sound becomes the one of weeping in the tent, and he's
right.
He kind of reaches out to see what's wrong with Defago, and asking him if he's in pain or something. But Defago does not reply to him.
Right.
But he does stop as soon as he's noticed. So he's caught in the act, and he's just like, dead silence. Simpson isn't even really sure if he's awake at this point in the story, but that's what he's doing. He's like, "Okay, what's going on here? Why is this grown man who's an experienced woodsman crying next to me in a tent?"
Yeah. There's even a point right before they go to sleep where Defago actually mentions the Wendigo to Simpson, but then he kind of like pretends that he just made it up, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like, it's freaking Wendigo. Yeah, that guy, just that funny thing, just nothing, no big deal.
It's totally not real. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, just something I like to talk about. Something I like to bring up at random after looking terrified once in a while.
Yeah.
So it's my hobby. It's empathy farming. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's not really getting too much of a reply from Defago at this point. He's like whispering questions that are not exactly quoted in the story, so we don't know what they are. But he's just like, "Dude, okay, if anything's wrong, just let me know, and just sort of
wake me up if anything is starting to happen."
Yeah,
and then quiet descends upon them.
Just keep a bit of a communication going here, all right?
Yeah.
And so now you almost get this feeling in this story that Simpson is like trying to go back to sleep, but he's like, "What in the world situation have I gotten myself into with this guy?"
Pretty much, yeah.
Let's see. Okay, I'm going to open up the story here a bit.
So, it's not much longer until suddenly Simpson is awoken again. And he wakes up and, like, Defago is moving around again. He's trembling. He's quaking like a leaf, writes Blackwood. And Simpson is done at this point with whispering and trying to pretend that there's nothing going on. And so Simpson basically says, "Hey, what's going on?" or something like that in a loud voice. And Defago doesn't respond. Defago instead kind of like gets up and kind of sits up as if he just woke up. And then they hear something that is very distressing.
Yes. What?
He said, prompting.
Oh. Yes, you caught me in a moment of reading. They hear a kind of a human voice.
Yeah.
And this can be pretty distressing in any situation in which no one else is supposed to be around. The way that it's
described is actually very interesting in this story. The way it's described is like this. Simpson declares possibly a human voice, hoarse yet plaintive, a soft, roaring voice close outside the tent, overhead rather than upon the ground, of immense volume, while in some strange way also most penetratingly and seductively sweet. It's a weird voice, and it's even a question of whether it's a voice at all.
Yes,
but then what happens is that this voice, or this thing that is trying to pretend to be a voice, suddenly yells out one word.
And that, of course, would be Defago, in a very hard pronunciation of Defago. Unless the hyphenated reference that I'm seeing is supposed to be a drawn-out Defago. Like, I wasn't sure when I read this if it was a ghoulish Defago.
Yeah.
Or a...
I think it's drawn out, as opposed to like trying to mimic those old Ohio ads from back in the day. Go.
Yeah, it seems like it should be more drawn out.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the contrary qualities described in the next paragraph of the voice. A sound, unlike any sound he had ever heard in his life, and combined a blending of such contrary qualities Simpson is hearing. He describes it as a sort of windy crying voice, as of something lonely and untamed, wild and of abominable power.
Right.
And the abominable power part is tacked onto the end is kind of like the part where you hear something in the woods, and it's at first it's just a voice, and then it's like, wait, this doesn't belong, and it almost gives it a sense of rumbling to kind of describe the way that it seems like it might not be a voice at all, is because it could very well be something almost earthquake-ish or grinding within the ground, within or within some trees or something. All of
a trick of the wind or something like that.
Yet somehow with the subtlety of a chainsaw.
Yeah. So Defago reacts, and he reacts in a way that surprises Simpson, because up until now, and in general, Defago is there and has been pretty reliable, but not only has he been reliable, but it's also kind of his job to be reliable. So instead of like saying, hey, what was that? And them having a conversation, Defago jumps up and runs out of the tent. He just vanishes out into the darkness. No light, no shoes even, or he might have still had his moccasins on, but like the story describes it as his feet were kind of sticking out of the end of the tent earlier, and so like I'm not sure. They later on say that he had moccasins on, so maybe he was sleeping in his shoes. But in any case, he runs out of the tent, and it's not good. It's not good at all.
Yeah, it's actually a good paragraph here where he says, "And as he went so astonishingly fast that the voice could actually be heard dying in the distance, he called aloud in tones of anguished terror that at the same time held something strangely like the frenzied exultation of delight. Oh, oh, my feet of fire, my burning feet of fire, oh, oh, this height and fiery speed." And then it went right into a New Kids on the Block song.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I don't know if that's what you thought when you read that. I was thinking, oh, 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 oh.
No, I did not think that. But I'm not as much of a boy band connoisseur as you are.
Well, you know me. I mean, Now, I'm never going to be able to forget those songs because my sisters listened to them all the time when we were kids.
Oh, yeah, that can do it.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff, let me tell you.
Trauma. It's called generational trauma.
Yeah, it was not the right stuff, I'm sure of that.
No, it was not.
My burning feet of fire. So yes, this is where it turns into a foot fetish story. They had those in the 1920s, so yeah, no, I'm just kidding. It's not that horrifying of a story. It's just your classic pulp horror.
Yeah.
But the distance dying quickly is one of the most interesting parts of the story, because this comes up several times, and also at the end of the story, it definitely explains a couple of the happenings, or at least one specific happening, in which they arrive at a point and they're like, how did he get here first? This is kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's not just that, right? Like, Simpson is stuck there. He's like, oh crap, I'm all by myself. It's night. I guess I need to wait until dawn because I can't do anything in the dark. But basically, his only lifeline has just vanished. And he's left alone in this tent in the middle of the night. And, like, you know, there's not much he can do at this point. But he waits until dawn. And he says, all right, there's some light now. I'm going to see if I can track... Defago did tell me to go run and get help if something happened. But, I'm not a complete novice. I'm going to go see if I can at least track where he ran to, and maybe I can find him. I'll yell his name. Maybe he'll pick up and maybe everything's going to be fine. So Simpson begins to track the tracks of Defago as he ran out of the tent. And he's able to do this fairly easily because there was a little bit of snow that fell over the nighttime. So there's some fresh snow, and the footprints are very easily visible. And this is where things get a little bit weird.
Ah, yes, the tracking of the footsteps. So he's managing to track Defago for a while, and the interesting thing about tracking in the snow is that the snow is keeping a pretty good shape of the foot in which he is able to track. But there seem to be greater and greater distances between the tracks of his feet, up to and including to the extent that at one point Simpson is looking at the distance between one set of tracks and the next, and he says, I'm going to try and jump that far and see what happens. And couldn't even make it a quarter of the way, which, at that point, any sensible person would be like, I think it's time for me to go find that canoe.
Well, there's something else that he sees, too. He sees what look like they could be moose tracks, but there's something peculiar about them. They're not shaped right. He's not an expert, but he's at least studied what moose tracks are supposed to look like, and what, how the difference between a bull and a sow, or bull and cow moose, how their tracks look different. And he's seeing this, and he's like, no, these aren't even quite right for moose tracks. But then he's also seeing these tracks of Defago, and there's something funky about them too, because he starts noticing like this strange quality that they have. He describes it as if it's like a color on them that he has trouble explaining.
Yeah, he's managing to pull some color out of the space that's left in the snow.
Yeah.
Reference.
An indistinct fiery tinge, he says. And the question is like, what is he seeing? Is he seeing, is his foot bleeding, or is there something more strange happening? And it's not described as if it's like blood spots, but it's described as if like there's some kind of glowing quality almost to the footprints.
Yeah, it's weird because it's not actually. It's not clear whether he's actually seeing something physical or if the quality of the footprint itself is leaving this impression.
Yeah.
So he continues to follow the tracks, and he is watching as it goes on. He's saying, okay, well, it's a little weird that these moose tracks are in tandem with what he's assuming are Defago's tracks.
Yeah.
And as he goes further, he realizes with quite a bit of horror that the footprints that seemed to be Defago's at the time are slowly morphing into smaller versions of what the other set of tracks appear to be.
Right.
Some creature of which he is not able to put a picture or name.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as one final extra piece of weirdness out of all of it, there seems to be a point at which the tracks moving in tandem suddenly also seem to take off into the sky, not physically, but in the sense that he's looking at the tracks and he's saying, it's almost like they vanish into the sky, both of them at the same time, as if
well, it's not
Defago
almost like
was
he actually
picked up
spends
by
a good amount of
something.
time looking around. It says that he like looks 100 yards in all directions and can't find another track.
Yeah.
You know, he spends a ton of time looking around and trying to find another footprint from either Defago or whatever it was that Defago was chasing, and he has no luck. You know, they really did seem to just kind of vanish into the air at that point.
Yeah, and so despite the fact that we were very kind to Simpson about his decent wood skills earlier, it is at this point in the story that I am convinced that the man is an idiot. Because it took him this long to say, I can't gather food for myself very well. I can maybe start a fire, but I can't really survive out here in the wilderness. I've tracked these footprints all this way, and it continued to get more horrifying the longer I tracked it, and now they've utterly vanished. It's time to go to that canoe.
Well, he goes back to the camp first.
Yes, he does. I know. That's why he's an idiot.
Yeah.
He discovers a... oh, no, this isn't the point at which stuff looks like it's missing yet, is it? That's when... Yeah, that's later.
Yeah.
He gets back to the camp, and he's not exactly sure what to do.
So there's a thing that happens here, too, is that he's standing there at the end of these tracks, and he hears something again, right? He hears what sounds a lot like Defago crying out again, and he's crying out the same kind of nonsense, the this fiery height, my feet of fire, my burning feet of fire. Only the voice is coming from basically the sky, and so Simpson is very unnerved at this point. And in fact, from a literary perspective, the story is doing a very good job of building up tension in a kind of slow and believable way. What started out as, let's track this guy who was following a moose, turns into his feet are morphing and he is jumping into the air farther than I think that any human can. And now I'm also, hundreds and hundreds of yards out in the bush away from my camp, and I don't know if I can necessarily find my way back. Like, he's in trouble at this point, and it's becoming increasingly clear that he is in trouble.
Yeah, he's slowly figuring it out. This part of the story, what happens here, up until the point that he finally decides to go and get help.
Yeah.
It's a little unclear in my head because I kept zonking out while I was reading this part.
Well, he took most of the day tracking the footprints, and then he took the rest of the day basically trying to find the camp again. So he's basically like, okay, I've got to sleep here tonight, whether I like it or not. I can't find the canoe in the dark, so I'm gonna have to stay here tonight with the rations that we have. I'll start a fire, and I'll just try to make sure that whatever got Defago doesn't get me. And so he basically sits the whole night by the fire without going to sleep, constantly keeping the fire awake and constantly keeping himself aware until dawn breaks once again. And he doesn't hear anything this night. He doesn't hear the crunching of the thing that called out to Defago. He doesn't hear Defago again either. He just sits there, becoming increasingly scared and paranoid and isolated and exhausted over the course of the whole night.
Yeah, I was hoping I could find it. There was actually a paragraph in all of that I must have read 20 times because I kept falling asleep while I was reading it, and then I woke up and I was like, "Oh, wait, okay, I gotta finish this," and I started reading it again, and then I fell asleep again. And I swear I can't remember exactly where it was, but I was, by the time I was done, I was a good hour and a half into reading the same 3 or 4 paragraphs over and over again. Mm-hmm. And I sort of just gave up for the day that day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was almost to the point where I was picturing that, this is, it was Simpson trying to fall asleep in the camp, but the noise kept waking him up. That's where I was at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know. Somehow I thought telling this side story would be funnier in my head, and it didn't come out that way.
That's all right.
Yeah.
So dawn comes, Simpson gets back up, and he's like, okay, now I have to spend all of today exhausted, hungry, thirsty, and alone. I have to find the canoe, and I have to get back to the main camp. And that's what he spends the whole next day doing. He manages to find the canoe. He's thankful that Defago did such a good job of marking the area, because he doesn't actually have that much trouble finding the canoe. It takes him a little while, but not too bad.
Yeah, Simpson
he starts
was
rowing
probably
west.
Simpson was probably like, that was such a better job than what they did in the Willows.
Yeah. Well, it's important.
Yeah.
And
here it is.
He's like, well, Defago said row due east, I believe. No, due west into the sun. So I guess what I said earlier about Defago and Simpson going northwest was wrong. They actually went northeast. But anyway, now, he's in the canoe, he's rowing west, he's using his compass. He's, I got, due west, and just due west is what Defago told me to do. So off I go. And then he beaches the canoe and he starts walking again, and finally, just as night is starting to fall again, he manages to find the camp where Punk and Cathcart and Hank are all waiting for him, basically. But he is messed up at this point.
Oh, yeah. Simpson is not in a good place.
No.
So there's a good amount of ranting and raving that goes on in this part of the story, and it's a little bit humorous almost, the way that Dr. Cathcart is spending a lot of time talking to Simpson about what he says that he saw and trying to find explanations for all of it.
And Simpson is even deliberately holding some things back. He's not just quite babbling nonsense. He's like, well, I can't say this. They'll think I've gone crazy. But he's like, I lost Defago. We need to find Defago. And they're like, you're not going to do anything until you've had a good night's sleep and some food. So basically, Cathcart's like, here, have some morphine.
Yeah.
And Simpson sleeps for 6 hours.
And
then they get started ready to look to go out on the expedition to look for Defago.
Yeah, I like the idea that they had this nice long 6-hour delay where they were like, "Oh, there's nothing we can really do at the moment. We'll wait 6 hours and then we'll go find him."
Well, it's almost nightfall again.
But I mean,
time in transit is getting very greatly compressed in this story.
Yeah, but you've got an older, wiser person and an experienced guide.
Yeah,
I don't think Punk wasn't anywhere to be seen in this part of the story, was he?
No, Punk was there. He was just keeping camp.
Yeah,
like usual.
He stays there when they go off after Defago.
Right.
So he's got his priorities.
Well,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're like, all right, let's go find this guy that's jumping all over the woods like Daffy Duck and see if we can help him out. And they go on the hunt for him, and the whole time in Dr. Cathcart's head, or rather in his actions and words to the others, he is maintaining what is essentially a facade of reason in what is happening. Because the way that Blackwood describes the things that Dr. Cathcart is saying, it is readily apparent to everyone else that he's doing it for the sake of keeping some level of sanity for all of them, but he's unsure of it himself.
Yeah.
And I think the most convincing aspect of it was that he didn't have much of an explanation for the weird smell part of it. But in his head, he was like, well, I mean, if we actually do smell something, then yeah, that's there's not much explanation for that, is there?
Well, so this is actually something that we missed. When that voice happens, Simpson actually does smell something, and then it vanishes a couple minutes later. And later on, he's describing it to Cathcart, and he's saying, it's kind of like the smell of lions, because these guys are trophy hunters.
Yeah, the smell of lions.
So Simpson is describing it as like the smell of lions, but also somehow, whereas the smell of lions is kind of acrid and harsh, there was actually something kind of sweet and warm to the smell that made you kind of, not feel it quite so much as a danger as the smell of lions is. And so Simpson is having a hard time describing this to Cathcart, and Cathcart's like, yeah, I kind of get what you mean, but at the same time, we haven't smelled it, so, I don't know what to tell you.
At the same time, we're not weird lion sniffers, so I don't know what to tell you, buddy. Which is funny, because lion is such a tinny word, but lion smell is more of a woody smell. Not like antelope. Antelope smell is definitely a tinny smell.
But it's a woody word.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how that works out.
Yeah.
The give and take of predator
it's the common
and prey.
inversion. That's just how it works.
It's the 80-20 rule. Wait, what? That doesn't make any sense at all. Just run with it. No, we're not running with it. My
Build with
fiery
it, then.
feet refuse to run with it.
We could use some 80-20 to build stuff.
Yeah. So they go hunting for Daffy Duck, and they have a lot of self-convincing to do as they're shouting his name in the woods, and I don't think they don't get to see the tracks. I don't believe, because
new snow has fallen
Yeah.
in the time that it took Simpson to get back to the camp. So everything is gone, and it's not just that it's not that the tracks are gone, but there's also no tracks of other animals either. There's no rabbit tracks. There's no squirrel, no birds. It's as if this entire chunk of the forest is just dead.
Yeah, and it really stumps them, because they get back to the camp and all the food is kind of missing.
Yeah.
So they go out on the hunt, and they do eventually, I guess, catch wind of Defago.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, Simpson is out there madly shouting Defago's name, and it's, I believe they seem to hear him all around at one point.
Yeah.
And then he appears.
Yeah.
And
they hear a loud thump somewhere out in the bush. It's nighttime, so they don't see it. They just hear like a loud thump. And then out of the forest, out of the tree line, stumbles Defago, it looks like.
Well, it sort of looks like. It's very like vaguely humanish is about the extent of it, but there's definitely a lot that's off about it. And
they say it's like it's like
skin that was inflated and allowed to sag again.
Yeah, for the Defago who sat huddled by the big fire, wrapped in blankets, drinking hot whiskey and holding food in wasted hands, was no more like the guy they had last seen alive than the picture of a man of 60 is like a daguerreotype of his early youth in the costume of another generation. So, it says it's Defago. It's acting like Defago. It even looks a little bit like Defago, but it looks like Defago has gone through something horrible. His skin, is hanging off of his bones as if he's been starved for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's a bigger change than you would expect for someone who's been lost for just a few days in the wilderness.
You burn a lot of calories Tarzaning around the woods and leaping all over the place in the snow. So, it's a rigorous weight loss program. So, I mean, he's essentially
a vigorous weight loss program.
Yes, also vigorous. He's essentially he's kind of wasted away to the extent that they're not even sure if he's going to be able to survive this. They're calling for the whiskey. They're wrapping him in blankets. They're trying to get him to lay down and take a rest, and it's clear to them that he's burnt out, almost energyless, which is funny later on. But Hank has a bit of a different view of what is happening here, and he doesn't like it.
Yeah, Hank is not convinced that this is Defago at all.
Yeah, so the extent that he has a resemblance to Defago is that limited, that Hank is suspicious of what they're seeing, and the fact that he pulls out a knife, almost like he is going to attack Defago, is even stranger, because let's assume that it's not Defago, and it is just someone else. This person is also clearly malnourished, and something is very, very wrong with them. Why is Hank pulling out a knife? What's the deal here? What's your problem, bro? And this, in the last part of the story, is where we start to get the story of what we all came here for, the Wendigo itself. And I believe that, is it Hank or Punk that tells this story, because they still don't really. I believe Hank is the one that mentions the story about how when an Indian would go off and not return, to get that wanderlust or whatever.
Yeah.
They called it going to see the Wendigo. And he plays it off as, well, this is just a phrase we have. It's like, it's not a real creature per se. It's just a thing that happens to someone. They go off to see the Wendigo. But even Hank, it's kind of implied Punk. Even Punk it's implied in the story that Punk actually believes the Wendigo is a real thing. Heavily implied because, we'll get to that. But Hank definitely believes the Wendigo is a real thing, and he thinks that what is masquerading before them as Defago is none other than the creature itself that has us all a bit fixated to the story, which is kind of strange because I've heard the story of the Wendigo elsewhere where people become Wendigos. It's not a creature itself, and so I'm not sure what Hank's exact feeling was about this, if he thought that it was another creature, or if he knew that it was Defago, but it was no longer Defago that was in the body of Defago.
Well, so what ends up happening is that finally, as Hank is freaking out, Defago kind of smiles in a very creepy way at them, and he says, "I seen that great Wendigo thing," he whispered, sniffing the air about him exactly like an animal. "I've been with it, too." And then Hank freaks out and basically points at his feet and says, "His feet! Oh God, his feet! Look at his great changed feet!" And Defago is just standing there, bundling the folds of the blanket around his feet so that you can't see his feet. But at the point that everybody notices it, Defago suddenly stands up and gets this weird dark malicious expression on his face, and he says, "Now you seen it too," he wheezed. "You seen my fiery burning feet, and now, that is, unless you can save me and prevent, it's about time for..." And then then that maliciousness goes away, sort of, but he starts to scream out, and basically he vanishes off into the distance again.
Quite quickly, quite before anyone can stop them, Dr. Cathcart, who was closest to him, is taken completely by surprise. And, Defago he's gone. He's Daffy Ducked his way out of there again.
And it's worth noting that this is a really great part of the story where the tension reaches a peak, where, you don't know whether this thing is gonna just basically, attack everybody, or attack somebody, or take somebody else away, or who knows what it's gonna do. As I was reading this, I was like, there was a very distinct sense of dread as to what is going to happen with this thing that is and isn't Defago at the same time, and so it was a really effective climax. At least, that's what I thought.
Yeah, until they fail to find Defago any further, and so they have no choice but to return to base camp.
Yeah,
and that is where it gets a little interesting. There's actually, at the very end of the story, there's this quick intermission, which is a flash forward for a lot of what happened with the characters. The most interesting, I think, being Punk, who it's described as he was doing his own thing while everyone else was looking for Defago, and at some point he kind of hears the approach of someone near the water, and he smells something, and without any hesitation whatsoever, knowing that what's at the water is Defago, it's the smell that essentially he packs everything up real quick and just leaves. He doesn't even wait for everyone else. He's just gone. They don't see him again.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite things about the story, was just the way that Punk he kind of gave the impression that he didn't necessarily believe in the Wendigo, but when it came down to it, he believed in the Wendigo strong enough that he wanted nothing to do with that. And he just vacates the premises.
Yeah, they get back to their main camp, and Punk is just gone. There's no fire. There's no Punk there to welcome them, and they're so completely exhausted at this point that they don't even know what to do. But
Yeah, you get
then
a little
Yeah,
little bit more of that future intermission where Simpson, it talks about him at his parish, giving sermons and talking about the dark things that exist in strange places in the world. And
yeah,
Dr. Cathcart never really recovered from the experience because it shattered his scientific beliefs so strongly that he, least of all, was able to recover from the psychological impact of it.
yeah.
Interesting, him being a bit of a psychologist himself.
Right.
And unfortunately, Hank probably had it the worst and the best because Hank was good friends with Defago. And
Right.
so when they pull back up to the base camp and find Defago completely, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's he is a shell of his former self.
Yeah, exhausted to the point of emaciation, the French Canadian, what was left of him, that is, fumbled among the ashes, trying to make a fire, his body crouched there, the weak fingers obeying feebly the instinctive habit of a lifetime with twigs and matches. But there was no longer any mind to direct the simple operation. The mind had fled beyond recall. And with it, too, had fled memory. Not only recent events, but all previous life was a blank. Basically, what's left behind is a hollow husk that once was Defago.
But however, this is more Defago than what they had previously seen because
yes, this is actually him, the real man.
Yeah, Hank confesses that this is him and is distraught by the state of his friend and openly weeping while picking the man up.
Yeah.
And it's a lifelong friendship, and his friend is reduced to this. And I believe Defago lasts a couple of weeks after that. And he doesn't have much to say. He says very little about his experience and doesn't recall any of it, really. And that's that. And it just sort of leaves everyone
Destitute,
involved is
distraught.
Yeah, completely traumatized by this.
Yeah, and they find out eventually what happened to Punk, and basically when Punk found out what was happening, and he smelled that smell and he heard what was going on, he basically got up and left. And he made the entire journey back to his homeland in 3 days, which is an incredible feat considering how far they had already gone.
Yeah, he booked it.
Yeah, he booked it.
He did not want to go see the Wendigo at all.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is The Wendigo by Algernon Blackwood. A pretty damn good story.
And
not quite on the level of the Willows, but still really good.
Oh, the Willows was fantastic. This was pretty good too.
The Willows was almost hypnotically good. Like that's the way I described it. Just the sense of isolation and like being surrounded by nature is so strong in that story that it's like I found myself when I was reading The Willows having to kind of like reread paragraphs over and over again because like the way that it was written was kind of hypnotizing me. This story doesn't hypnotize you, but it does present a very interesting, series of events.
Yeah, I struggled a bit at the beginning of the Wendigo because I was half asleep for one thing, but for another thing, I didn't find the initial build up to them actually sitting down at camp for the first time and discussing things. I didn't find it all that interesting, so I couldn't remember that much about it when.
It's a little
dry.
It has some of the pastiche of like a kind of a boring frontier story at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But then it does kind of wind up in a very satisfying way.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I'd say probably the best bits of the story are 3/4 in.
Yeah. Well, the searching for Defago was really was really interesting. I found that like Simpson's initial search because Defago told him to run. And he's like, no, I'm going to still give it a shot. There's this fresh snow on the ground. I can see the footprints. I may be green, but I'm not an idiot. I can do this. And finally he comes up against this, impassable wall, effectively. The footprints disappear. That part I really liked. I really liked the last few moments of the fake Defago. And Hank's reaction. And that moment where it gets this malicious grin on its face, I was like, I expected that everybody was going to survive this story, so to speak, but now I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
And so that was really good too. Probably my two favorite parts of this particular story.
Yeah.
And of course, now that we've read it, we can both, anytime something weird happens, we can both yell about our flaming feet of fire or whatever. And, only people who have read this story will know what the hell we're talking about.
I'll leave that ball in your court. Actually, when I was reading the part where Hank jumps back and says, "Look at his feet," my instinct was to think, now's not the time, Hank.
Your instinct is someone who spends too much time on the internet.
My instinct is someone who's watched way too much Mystery Science Theater 3000. Was I was imagining Simpson saying, "Now's not the time, Hank."
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there was all in all, good story, worth a read. Not very long, so even if it doesn't sound too interesting to anyone, it's not something that will take a significant portion of your day.
It's the version that I read is 22 pages and 11-point font. It's it's maybe a 30 to 45 minute read, maybe a little bit longer if you take your time.
Well, it's about an hour and a half read if you keep falling asleep. Solid story and a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, never try to read when you're half asleep. It'll just make you all asleep. Anyway, that will do it for this week, everybody. So thanks for listening to us talking about the Wendigo, and we'll figure something else out for next week. As always, I'm Rudy.
You're not supposed to tell them we're doing this on the fly. I mean, they know, but...
I'm sure they know at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, he's Rudy. I'm Justin. Go see the Wendigo.
Yeah, that's right. No. Read the Wendigo. Don't see the Wendigo, because the result of seeing the Wendigo is that you die. So, try to avoid it.
Some of you go see the Wendigo.
Those of you who we want to see the Wendigo, go see the Wendigo.
Please.
Anyway, thanks for listening, and we will see you next week with something about writing or books or God knows what.
Yeah, probably cartoons.
I mean, you'll bring them up, as you always do. It's like your job.
It was accidental this time. I didn't even realize I was doing it, because it's normally anime.
That was an accident? You took 20 minutes to talk about a friggin' episode of The Real Ghostbusters.
I mean, it was sort of relevant. We're talking about pulp horror here, and, well, I would have forgotten to bring it up if I waited another week.
I'm not saying it's not fair. I'm just saying it's what you did.
God, there's going to be
and everyone will remember you for it.
Yeah, this is going to be the thing people remember from this episode.
No, just the thing that people remember of you for all time.
Oh, I mean, that's fine.
In the middle of an episode, in the middle of a podcast recording about the Wendigo, you talked for 10 minutes about The Real Ghostbusters.
No, it'll just be on my gravestone. It'll say he watched The Real Ghostbusters, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's my epitaph.
All right. See y'all later, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Thanks for listening to the Wordy Pair Podcast. Our passion is all things writing, world building, and getting into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We hope you enjoyed our unique takes. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to get your weekly dose of writing weirdness. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on Twitter. For Rudy, it's @Rudolph_Cone. And for Justin, @Ninja Mouse Chew. See you next time on the Wordy Pair Podcast.